Do you have a reading today?
I do have a reading today. Our
No.
reading will be on page 28 of the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. And it is the second paragraph. We, in turn, sought the same escape from all desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has provided to be a loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or, if you prefer, a design for living that really works.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, Paul Alcoholic, good morning, everyone from Northern California. Yeah, what came up when you were just reading that is the process of sincerely and then getting established. So we go to step one, and hopefully in one, I think in the 12 and 12, they talk about it as a reflection on what it was like before we got sober. So, and hopefully that reflection, we get to the point that we're powerless over alcohol, and maybe you can add a lot of other things, and that our life is unmanageable, but I feel because we're managing it. And so when those become, if we're convinced of that, that's basically the first step. Then the second is, you know, we have observed or we've come to believe that something has done for us what we couldn't do for ourselves concerning the insanity that precedes the first drink. So that for me was an observation after about 8 weeks of being sober for the first and last time, which was cool. And I saw that I hadn't drank in 8 weeks, and I had come to believe that something had done for me what I couldn't do for myself, which was not drinking for 8 weeks. And then the third step I was introduced to, which I've had a lot of experience in my life surrendering to things. Uh, surrendering to the police, surrendering to drugs and alcohol, surrendering to a lot of things. But at this point, the idea of surrendering to this sense of a higher power was really cool because I had just come out of a drug program that I was in for 2 years. And I remember when I left there, I went back out for 10 months and then I finally washed up on the shores of AA. But in hindsight, I could see that when I left that program, though I had graduated with flying colors, uh, I didn't like the people, the person that was running it, or the people. I didn't like some of the rules and shit, but I had to begrudgingly admit that my life looked better with them running it than it did with me running it. So I had a strong sense, I wasn't clear, but a sense of the problem because I know I could see that I could turn my life over to almost anybody and they would do a better job with it than I did because they didn't have a vested interest as I do. And so the third step I arrived at, and I was really keen on the principle. I wasn't super clear yet about the quit playing God. That's an important part of it. But I was, it looked like a great upgrade from surrendering to Delancey Street to surrender to a higher power, which was a much, it wasn't the only way I could surrender to it was just, I'd have to live in an institution. It was a lot more free ranging than that. And that was much more, it was just fit better. So, yeah, this whole idea of, and then it's a design for living, whatever. I'm a real believer in that because what happens is sometimes we feel great, but a couple more minutes later, things can change. So I need to have, like, I may not be willing at all times, but if I have a bridge between willingness based on habits or living a life based on principles, not on feelings and my observations and my predeterminations of situations, but actually by principles, I find that I've been able to, sobriety has spanned over 32 years of living, which is incredible. So, yeah, I don't know what else you want to talk about on that. Uh, I like to always go back to the exact nature. It's not the exact nature. In a sense, they talk about the exact nature of the wrongs. We're just dropping the S out and just humbly suggesting, hopefully, if you give it a chance to reflect on and see if it really does trigger a recognition of, yeah, that could be it. This idea of uh, an identification with a mental image that's drawn and redrawn and reinforced and constantly obsessed over, that identification as what I'm not is the cause of the defeat by that. Yeah, I get defeated by this sense of self because I keep calling it me. And until I can see it as something other than me, I can't really entertain being free from it. I can entertain a lot of effort to try to be free as it, or to try to turn it into a spiritual condition. But I find it's, in a way, there may be some effects, but in the end, it's fruitless because it will still dominate. But when I saw it as something other than me, and then I did an inventory on its manifestations in my life, not mine, which were resentment. I looked at resentment, fears, and harming other people in the pursuit of what I wanted in the sexual arena. And by recognizing that defeat was administered through me, but I was not the source of it. It was something else. And I finally had the possibility that that which was defeating me was other than me, so I can actually be free from it. And that really became a linchpin in the design for living that I was living. And it became, over time, it became the most important cog of the whole thing, because a lot of people are saddled with a lot of guilt and shame and remorse based on behaviors that they didn't really initiate, that something drove them to do what they ended up doing. Yet the mental state keeps harvesting a lot of uh, guilt and shame, and really a dominance of the past on our present moment. And to me, it's like a form of slavery. And I just like to see all of us traveling lighter, really. So I feel like if you get down to the exact nature of the wrong, it's just like if you have a rash and you think it's one thing, so you buy an ointment to take care of that one thing, and after a while you see nothing's changed. Should I just keep adding more of that ointment, or maybe I need to shop and see if there's something else? Even though I believed it was psoriasis, it's obviously not responding to a cure for psoriasis or a relief from psoriasis. So I have to give up my old idea and be open. And then maybe somebody will introduce an ointment to me. I'll I'll put it on and it works. And then I read what's said on the tin, and it says this is for eczema. So obviously I was mistaken. It wasn't you and the judge and the police. I had a huge role in it. And so now I've got the right ointment. I put it on and I know its efficacy because of the relief I get. And so I've had a huge amount of relief that's turned into a way of living from entertaining the program and this design for living from this diagnosis of the exact nature of the wrong. And I'm compelled to share it with the hopes that it will, do something like it's done for me with you. Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you, Paul. This is the time to raise your hand if you have a question for Paul. There's different ways to do this depending on how your Zoom platform works. A lot of people will, like myself, will find it in the reaction window. You can select that and raise your hand um, if you have a question for Paul, and then I will get to you in kind. Do we have any questions from Facebook? I don't know. I don't see any questions come up just yet, Paul.
Great.
Not yet. Oh yeah, there is. Gary C's got a question.
All right, Gary, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks. So I'm going to take advantage of this open space here. Hi, Paula. I just wanted to share an insight from this morning or yesterday, and it's kind of reflecting on one of the stories you tell sometimes where you didn't notice your part in how things got to be the way they were, and then you did. Well, so a condition I noticed was that I would find myself in the desire or yearning for a better life, you know, and in my case, it often focuses on, well, I need a different partner. And I you know, and then, so, you know, sometimes I find myself like just kind of yearning and unhappy and wishing, you know, for better. I think it should be better or different or something. Well, I got to thinking, I guess it was this morning, and noticed that before that yearning happened, I was kind of engaging in a sort of, I was indulging myself in some wishful thinking, you know, sort of like, well, I could just go off and think this little story of, well, what if I had this relationship or that relationship? And I thought it was innocent, you know, like, it's okay, I can do this. It's sort of like having a piece of candy, even though I know candy's not good for me, but it's only a little bit, so it doesn't matter. Well, it dawned on me that that was my first step in, you know, that led to this state of yearning and sadness and unhappiness. So it really did come from me, so to speak. You know, not me. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if, you know, so I saw, just like you in the bar, the time you were hitting on some lady and you know, or the guy beat up on you and you forgot that he was, you know, you were hitting on his lady. Well, I saw my part in that state of desire and unhappiness because I had sort of succumbed to the fantasy of, well, what if I could just, you know, it'd be like watching a TV show that's not good for you or eating something. I gave myself permission to do something that actually led to my state of unhappiness and then forgot that I did that. Then I didn't notice it. So I don't know. I just wondered if you had any comments on that. That
Yeah.
process. Okay.
Yeah. To me, in a way, it's sort of like you have a house and you also have a big dog that used to be quite unruly, and you had it to protect you in the house, but now it won't let you out of the house. It bites people you don't want it to bite. It's barking constantly. Hmm?
It's okay.
Yeah.
It was just some
So
background noise.
you have this big dog, and let's say that's the alcoholism. Yeah. And now the dog's asleep. And now you got the run of the house, and now you can decide or whatever who comes and who goes. And it would probably be best not to tease that dog while it's asleep. Yeah, not like fuck it or tick it a little. And you're thinking, oh, who gives a shit? You know, it'll go right back to sleep, but it may not. And if it wakes up, then it starts taking shits all over the place, starts biting you, biting others, and there you go. So the idea of the word abstinence doesn't just have to be applied concerning drinking, the act of drinking and doing drugs and shit or acting out sexually. It can be you abstain from those thought streams that want to lead you to that sort of fuck it, yeah. And as you're on the boat ride to fuck it, halfway through you forget your role in everything, and you start having that old point of view. They're fucking with me. I got da da da. Yes. So the abstinence is that, like it said in the book, like people like us don't have the luxury to entertain anger, so to speak. Yeah, because we'll go to jail and shit like that. I mean, we some of us attract heavy consequences. So I've learned over time, I can't I can't enjoy the rush of getting angry and being righteous because it leads to me getting arrested or something. You know what I mean? Basically. So I've learned over time to abstain, and very joyfully in most cases, to abstain from those knocks on the door. Oh, what the fuck, you know? And I don't go down those little rabbit holes. Yeah. So I love the word abstinence. I don't think it's something you can do, but you can live from. It's pretty cool. And, you know, it's easier to abstain from the thoughts when they're not held as yours. Yeah. So that's why we keep pointing out it's a sense of ownership. Just like if you went to a park and there was 20 kids playing in the park, your attention would be on your kid. Yeah. Because it's your kid. It's the same thing. A resentment and your resentment are completely different. Yeah. Anger, your anger is completely different. Thought, me being the thinker, completely different. Yeah. And so this is what, when you see life from the exact nature of the wrong, the the mind that has such an incredible influence in your life gets weakened. You don't see them as your problems. Yeah. You see them as a problem. Yes. So you see thoughts as thoughts, not your thoughts. Feelings as feelings, not your feelings. And this is the basis of traveling lighter, really. And you gotta, yeah, you can't, you can't fucking tease that dog.
Yeah, can't tease a dog.
So enjoy the house. It's asleep. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a little kid, sticking, when you're a kid, you're crazy, you stick a little, you have a stick and you want, oh, I'm going to stick this in the wasp nest and just see what happens. Then you're crying to your mom, I got stung. What were you doing? Sticking the big stick in the wasp nest. Well, there you go. There was your role in it. So,
Yeah,
abstinence,
exactly.
uh, abstinence has a lot of meaning in my life, in a lot of ways. I wish I could express it. It's not just abstaining from, it's a lot of other stuff, yeah?
Yeah, it was just cool to kind of see the mental precursor to that state of misery I found myself in.
It's
There
very
were,
cool because you now saw a pattern of how self defeats you.
exactly.
How is, you know, we have a role in this. Yes, the higher power does this or do that, but we have to exercise a quality of seeing. We have to see our role in things so that we can see self's role in things because they're all mixed up. Yeah?
Yeah.
Our role and self's role has been seen as our role. Yeah? There's no discrimination in there. And so you need to start seeing because you've got like a vicious strain, yeah, going
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of other qualities. And that vicious strain is veering us into actions that have consequences. Yeah. And
Yes.
one time you'll tease that big dog and it won't go back to sleep. It won't. So yeah, I've
Go
seen
on
a
a
lot of
rampage.
people go out and they never come back into AA. And a lot of them die. Yeah. So they teased that dog. It woke up and it didn't want to go back to sleep. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people like that. I can usually sense it when we're live, where someone's got a little secret that they're going to drink again. And after a while, you realize whatever you're saying, they're just biding their time to go out and do what they want to do. So you just go, let's rush through the process because life's the greatest teacher, Yeah, go out and get loaded again. See what happens.
Yeah, see how that
I
works.
mean, and we can talk till we're blue in the face. One day actively out there can probably teach you pretty damn well. Yeah. I missed the
I don't know.
dog. Don't worry. Don't worry. You're not missing much. Yeah.
No, the
Yeah.
dog
But
is
that's
more
nice to
than
see. Now, see, that's sort of like when we can't see, we do an inventory, and the inventory hopefully allows us to see. Yeah, we're not seeing
yeah.
stuff, so we do an inventory so that we can see stuff. That's why you do the inventory, and on paper you see the pattern of how self has defeated you. You share it with someone else, yes, and now
Mm,
you start seeing it when it's
right.
getting ready to defeat you. It's not like an autopsy report. You're actually actively present at the crime scene, which can divert you being convicted. Yeah? But the
You can see
seeing,
them.
the first seeing we get is the inventory process, really. And through that we see our role in things. And then it's accompanied with really seeing our role in things. Yes?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is because obviously we're not seeing it, and we're taking our answers, and if we do an inventory, the inventory produces its answer, which is different than our answer is based on not seeing. It is, we're not seeing what's happening. We believe we know what's
The
happening,
inven
but it's not true.
Yeah, the inventory seems like a short circuit of the long way around, which is actually getting the consequences of, falling for the actually going through with the action. The inventory's a little kinder to be able to see that
Of course, and the
prior to
thing is,
actually the dog
it's
waking
been
up.
proven, but see, it's been proven in our own experience, we're not going to learn. So we've got to do
Yeah.
an inventory. We're not learning. We're not. We're not
Yeah.
learning. I mean, everyone around us knows we're in the state of insanity, which is doing the same thing, expecting different results, but we don't see it that way. We don't. Yeah. So many of us aren't going to come around based on consequences. We're going to come into AA, but the inventory is going to, in a way, restore our sight until we start seeing again. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we keep doing step 10, because you may go back into that myopic view. So you do the inventory and it restores your sight to you. Yeah. Until you until you recognize, yeah, you are of that seeing. Yeah, we need these processes to restore sight to us so that we can recognize by doing a 4-column inventory our role in things, because we're not doing it by observing it all day. We're not. We're seeing everyone else's role in things. Really. So we have to, that's why it needs to be on paper, not talked with someone, writing it down.
Mm.
Yeah, it has a different impact than sharing it with somebody. Writing it down so you see it on paper. All right, I fucking hate Wendy. And then after bringing it through a couple of columns, you see your role in things. What? Before, everyone who's at a bar today does the first two, columns. They know who they're fucking pissed at and why, but there's no recovery there. They just keep drinking. Yeah. We
Yeah.
add the third and fourth column to turn it around. Instead of having the spotlight on the other, it's put on us, so that we finally get to see our role, and then we finally get to see self's role. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
recognize that self is masquerading as us all fucking day. And it's manifesting unbelievable shit through us, and we're claiming to be the one that did it all. That's the bondage of self. The bondage of self, let's say Stanley took Paul over and Stanley did some shit while Paul, yeah? Now Paul comes to and believes that he did all that shit that Stanley did. I would be under the bondage of Stanley, yeah? Now I'm going to jail because of what Stanley did. Everything's ruined because I keep claiming, no, I did it, I did it, I did it. No, Stanley did it. Find Stanley, get rid of Stanley. Yeah.
So this is kind of like noticing when Stanley's starting to get
Exactly.
yeah, he's
It's
starting
like
to
a
notice
pair of
when Stanley
glasses
sits
when
down.
you can't see. You do an inventory. It acts like a
Yeah.
pair of glasses. And so you see, all right, it gives you an option. And one time I did it, it was, this was a very profound lesson in a way. I used to go to a meeting in San Francisco on Thursday night in a place called North Beach. And after the meeting, we'd go to a cafe, and there was this beautiful girl that worked behind the counter. And I was trying to be, charming with her and stuff. And then I found out she was married, so forgot about that. A couple of months later, I'm walking down the street, and I lived in the Haight-Ashbury area. I was walking down the street, and I run into her, and she's with a friend, and she tells me she's separated from her husband, and would you like to get together? So I'm going, yeah, definitely. And so she says, well, I'm dancing tonight at this Brazilian club. So I said, all right. I go there. First of all, I hadn't drank in about 7 months, 8 months, and everyone was drinking there. She was on the stage, and I'm standing there. At the break, she tells me, her husband's at the bar, yeah? And then her contemporary boyfriend is like about 4 people away from me. So I go, wait a minute. I look like I'm number 3 on the totem pole. I go home and I write an inventory about pursuing this woman. The inventory gives me clear directions, call off the hunt, so to speak. I don't want to do that. So I go ahead, I go against AA's answer, and I push my agenda. And obviously the shit hit the fan. I don't want to go into details, but the shit hit the fan. And in hindsight, I learned quite a lot. It's not only doing the inventory, it's receiving what it tells you. Yeah. I can do the inventory and then get right up and do what I want. Or I listen, I see what it tells me and maybe take that suggestion or that direction. Yeah.
Sounds like that inventory served
That was
you.
a big step in my recovery. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can feel it to this day. That was funny. I didn't like what AA said after I don't like that answer. All right.
All
Tease the
right.
dog, it woke up. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. I didn't drink, but I went through a lot of emotional hangovers. Yeah. Which were worse than ever. I cannot believe uh, there was a value in drinking. It kept me from emotional hangovers. When you were drinking, you just moved on to the next accident. But then if I act out when I'm sober, the feeling of, having my own foot in my mouth and just, we call them emotional hangovers. They were heavy because there was no way to distract, and I'd be like, felt so bad. And it, begrudgingly taught me, hey, you don't have the luxury to act out, Paul. You don't.
Yeah. Not
You
even
don't.
mentally.
Not even mentally. No. And there is the solution can, yeah. That's why I love the word abstinence. Abstinence is a very big space. There's a lot of freedom in there. Yeah. And there, obviously, when you see you're not the thinker, there's an abstaining of thought. There is.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the I is what has you already in a relationship with the thought. You're already fucking wed to it, so to speak. If the my can be seen through, and a thought can just be a thought, it usually passes quickly. Yeah. It needs what it wants to do, directed by the parasite. It wants to compel an action. It wants you to do something from the fuck it wants to lead you to. It wants you to act out. It
Yes.
does. That's how it makes a splash out here. It wants to break through the membrane of being in the head and then being in action. It does.
Yes.
And it will snap, it'll bite until you fucking act out, and then the consequences ensue. It could be just a isolated loneliness, or it could be a giant major arrest. I don't know, but it's going to be a consequence.
Yeah. It seems like an inventory sort of is the opposite of that. To be able to do an inventory instead of act out gives me a little space to.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's why when I work with people, I don't listen to what they say. I tell them, do an inventory first and then call me. I don't want to hear the story, really. I want to hear the story dissected by the inventory first. I don't want to hear their story. I don't. Yeah. I've
Yeah.
heard enough stories here. Why do I want to, turn into Stanley's channel? No. But I say, hey, listen, do the inventory and then we'll go over it. Then you can have my ear for hours if you want. But I'm not going to listen to a story. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. No. Sometimes you do because that's what's needed. But in most cases, I like to direct them right to taking the inventory on it. Yeah.
That's what prompted me today. I thought I like to complain about this, but I heard him say take an inventory first. So I went back and examined the situation again and looked again. What is my part in here? And that's when that showed up.
There you go.
There
See,
you go.
that's what I mean. You see, the inventory is a substitute for seeing, really. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in this seeing, you take the 4 columns, you move away from who you think is the cause of your problems to see your role in it. Yeah. When you see
Yeah.
your role in it, you see self's role in it. Yeah. Now you stop calling self's role your role, and you travel lighter. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Paul. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, Gary. We're going to move on. We've got a couple more questions. Um, the next question is going to be coming from Andy C. Please keep in mind when you ask your questions, we're trying to keep it in a question so we can get Paul's take on that and get as many questions as we can. So consider where you are. Where are you in your journey? Where are you? Are you stuck on step 4? Gary C. That was great. Just try to have it as a question rather than an all share, but sometimes we need to do that to get to the question, and that's respected too. So I am going to ask Andy to unmute himself. If you have a question, try to ask that. Thanks a lot, Andy. Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead and
I'm
ask your
unmuted.
question.
Yeah, hello, Paul. Thank you, Andy, recovered addict. Thanks to you. Paul, it's just two it's questions, and if you could just explain for me. I have a couple of sponsees on here. Can you help me give the definition of self can't get out of self to them, and how to recognize the parasite, if you don't mind?
All right. Well, let's ask the second one. Why don't you, if you'd like, you could suggest that they do an inventory, yeah, on the common manifestations of self, which is resentment, fear, and looking at the sexual behavior, see how you harm people in the pursuit of what you want, yeah, and then read page 64 where it says this is one way of looking at the inventory, which is being convinced self manifested in various ways is what has defeated us. We will now look at self's common manifestations. So try to frame it as not their inventory, but an inventory they're going to do on self. Yeah? It's quite different. Instead of it being their inventory, they're going to do an inventory on self. Yeah? And just have them do it and then hope maybe they'll see something, maybe they won't. But at least they'll start seeing that while they're living, there's something living through them at the same time. Yeah? Let's say a parasitical movement or a foreign pathogen, or let's say that it's sort of like let's say if you had what's that thing? They didn't have a cure, hepatitis B or something, yeah? You'd be feeling sick like a lot all the time. After a while, you think that's the way it is, you know? You and the sickness, you don't see it as different, yeah? You just take that to be you. And then once you take something and you get relief from it, then you find out you weren't the sickness, yeah? Because it's been separated from you. So you get relief from it, not as it, but from it. Well, the same way, the inventory, you can look at it as taking an inventory of your resentments, your fears, your acting out, or you can take an inventory of self's manifestations. Yeah. And those are fears, resentments, and acting out in the pursuit of what you want, or actually what it wants. So those are options. You can give them the one option and let them see if they get to see something that they used to look from. Yeah? All you need is a little free sample here and there, and then there'll be a recognition that there's something foreign in me that talks to me as me. Yeah? That's a that's a very profound moment when you see that other that has been masquerading as you, and you can do an inventory on it. Yeah, instead of another one on you, an inventory on it. Yeah. So what? So that you will have the eyes to see it. Yeah. And when you have the eyes to see it, you bring it to step 6 and 7. You say, hey, I'm entirely ready for that which I'm seeing, which is the parasite's movement, and I ask that power to reconfigure it. Yeah. So it's really about basically, recovering our sight to see what's going on. And before we get the sight, we use inventories to produce a sight. Yeah, to recognize, to see by writing how self has defeated us, because we're not seeing how self has defeated us right now. Yeah, we're seemingly blind to that, so we do an inventory to initiate a form of seeing how self has defeated us, which is going to lead to seeing how self defeats you. Yeah, not writing it, but seeing it. And then when you start seeing it, its ability to defeat you gets severely limited, because the only way it keeps defeating us is by us not seeing it. Yeah. Yeah. And then when we do see it, calling it us. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks. Hopefully that, yeah.
Thanks a lot, Andy. Um, we have two more questions on deck. The next one is coming from Rebecca P. Rebecca, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You ready, Paul?
I think Andy may have something to say again.
Hi,
Uh,
I'm
did you want me to go back to Andy, Paul?
Yeah, just go to Andy and then we'll go to Rebecca. Second, we'll be right there, Rebecca.
All right, let me just go and find Andy real quick. Give me just a second. And Andy, did you have a response or an additional feedback?
It was, yeah, the second part of the question, explaining how self can't get out of self.
Well, the best way to have that explained is for the person to see it. So just try to describe that we're identified as, there's a echo. We're identified as self, and that identification wants to get out of the identification. Yeah? We're not really in self. We're something prior to it. So yes. But basically that's going to come from recognition. People will realize after they do inventories and everything else that self can't get out of self, that there's something that I'm identified as that's trying to get out of what I'm identified as. It doesn't work. Yeah. It's actually the biggest form of being in self is the drive of self to get out of self. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thanks, bro. And Rebecca? Yeah.
Yep. So Rebecca, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm an alcoholic. On the inventory, I'm accustomed to doing inventory for resentments and anger and that stuff. Could you just explain how to do it like on a future decision? You were talking about doing that with like the girl that you met, and how did you do that?
Well, simply, I had a desire to be with this woman, yeah. But I ran into something that I knew something I didn't want to know because I wanted that desire to be fulfilled. But my gut was telling me this was probably not going to work out. But I didn't want to hear that. But when I did an inventory, it was very clear, yet I still didn't hear it. It was very clear that this was probably not a wise move, considering seemed to be having a very active husband and also a contemporary boyfriend. So it wasn't looking good for Paul. So by doing the inventory, it gave sight to the gut, so to speak. Yeah, the gut was there, but
Right.
I was putting a lot of static over that. By writing it, it cleared up the static and it was clear. And then I did it anyway, so I was accountable. Yeah. I knew better and still I did it. So I learned. Yeah. I didn't
Okay.
feel like, oh, I didn't know this was going to happen. I had a feeling what was going to happen, but
Right.
I thought I could get enough cookies out of the jar before I got caught or something, like usual, and it didn't work.
Right.
So yeah, the
Okay.
thing with the inventory, it's maybe about an incident, but it's about something much larger. It has to do with how our life has been sort of captured, and we've been living under a false alias, really. Yeah, something has lived through us as us, and it's like a parasite that's not that hospitable to the host. You know, it doesn't have the host's best drives in mind. It's just going to override the host's agenda and imply or enforce its agenda, and it does. We don't do well under it. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
being such a hostile, let's say, parasite, I'm just using it as an image. It has to have a great strategy, and it does. It has convinced the host that it's the host. So the host can't entertain being free from it. It can only entertain being free as it, yeah, which is the bondage of self. The
Right.
bondage of self is being identified as something that we're not. That's the bondage of self. So that's what the inventories. See, I wasn't looking at my role in things, basically. Yes, when I came into this situation, sobriety, the last thing I wanted to see was my role. Because when I was young, I thought I had a huge role in everything. So I had an unbelievably inappropriate size of responsibility when I was a kid. So my desire was to get out of that. And of course, we only live in extremes. So I became completely irresponsible. I washed up in AA. And one of the first big waves of recovery was seeing my role in things by doing inventories. When I first did the first inventory, I didn't see it. Then I went to see Joe and Charlie, these old guys that did a seminar on the big book. And when they explained the fourth step, I got it. I went back to my motel room and wrote one out with the understanding of my role in things, which had a completely different result than my first inventory.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and then that my role in thing and self's role in things, then after I saw my role in things, I started to see self's role in things. Because just like it talks about fear, self is like a thread in the fabric of our existence. Yeah. We don't see where it ends and we start, or where we end and it starts. It's very insidious. And so our first way of seeing it, I feel, is inventory. And then we start having the eyes to see it through a spiritual awakening, really, which is a result of the steps. Yeah, seemingly, you know. Did I think that's it, Rebecca, right? That's all right?
Yes, yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that question. Just following up real quick, Paul, you said that you brought that inventory to writing for that specific event with that girl. How did you write that down? Did you do it in a quick column form? I'm just curious for some of us that
Yeah,
might.
4 column. I learned the Joe Charlie way, which I like, the 4 column. That's not actually, it's the big book way, but people get confused with the 3 columns on page 65, I guess. But if you read what comes after 65, it says after the 3 columns, you return back to your list, which is the questions of where was I or am I being selfish, inconsiderate, self-seeking, frightened, and dishonest. So they don't put the 4th column, but they speak about it in the directions. So Joe and Charlie just put it down on paper, 4 columns, make it simpler, and it's a format. So if you can do one incident of, let's say, one resentment from the 1st to the 4th column, you can do thousands. You have the formula now, and of course AA produces a different answer than you do. That's its great value. So because the way we see things is part and parcel of the problem. Yeah. So yeah, we come to a lot of conclusions based on a lot of false evidence appearing real. The
Perfect.
inventory doesn't fall for that. The inventory is just very clean. Take it from that 1st column to the 4th column. There'll be an answer there.
Gotcha. Thank you. And if anybody is interested in Joe and Charlie's method, which is what I've discovered was actually described in the big book, do a quick search on Joe and Charlie's inventory. There are formats and formulas to show you how to do it. It's very helpful
Yeah.
for me. Explore that.
And the 12 and 12 has a much more extensive inventory where you ask a lot more questions. The 4th step is the introductory, because we're blind. Yeah. So we've got to have a form of seeing until we have the spiritual awakening allows the seeing to become readily available. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
how do you see something that you missed? Through description. Yeah. Now, after you see what was in the description, you can recognize that which was described when it's appearing. Now you have the eyes to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That comes from inventory for a lot of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Discovery from description and then discovery from acquaintance both happen. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes, and then the one leads to less writing because you see it, and it leads to more 6 and 7.
Right.
Yeah, because 6 and 7 is like the recycling bin. It takes what was going to turn into a fucking consequence and it uses it for a different purpose, because that's the higher power. The higher power is using the material of our life for a different purpose than the parasite does. Yeah, it does. So we need to regain, in a weird way, we have to regain what was never lost, our sight, meaning awareness, let's say. And so the inventory starts allowing that because it describes self's role in our lives so that we can recognize self's role in our lives now. Yeah, because we didn't see it back then. Now we can see it. Hallelujah. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Paul, for that last little bit. I appreciate it. It's very helpful. We have another question, and that question's coming from Meryl Lammers. Meryl, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Hey, Paul. I was listening to a 5th step the other day, and the person had put themselves on their resentment list, and which, I stopped this person and said, that's not a direction in the big book, nor was it a direction I gave you, but I'm curious why you did this. And this person said, well, that's what they say in meetings. Um, and it kind of like, it just made me feel a little like, ugh. And so I had this person not read that. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that. It just seems like it's more selfing in some way,
Well,
but I'm curious what you think.
when you're coming out of the book, you want to stay with the book, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not presenting my way to do an inventory. The way we're talking about is in the book. Bill W., they say very clearly, being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what has defeated us. We're going to look at its common manifestations, which is resentment. So she's not having a resentment on that which has a resentment. Yeah, it's self resenting self. She's not involved in it at all, except for being the carrier of the disease. Really, is she? No. But yeah, I don't suggest people do that
Yeah. Okay.
myself.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I would say that tends to go more into a hatred of self as self, which it loves, really. Self hatred as self is a love affair. Self loves to hate itself.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of traction in that, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that would be my suggestion. Whatever.
Thanks.
Good to see you, Meryl. Yeah.
That's some interesting topography that you just came across, and you rarely speak about that. The self-hating self. Sometimes I hear that you can't trust self, and it's not going to be a service animal and all that stuff. And sometimes that encourages me to like, perhaps, not like self and hate self. And then you just shared something about self-hating self is kind of continuing the process.
Well, that's the policeman and the thief thing. See? All right. Now there's a healthy hatred of self, but it's selfing that's doing it, or is saying that's doing it. So it just extends itself by claiming. Yeah. So there's a lot of seeing going on, and then a position set, and that's not the seeing. That's a mental position talking about another mental position.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
self trying to get out of self.
yeah.
You're not going to vanquish a foe. It's the hero and the villain are the same.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that cop and thief, but I do understand your point.
Well, if they come back, we'll get
Okay.
to it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Currently, there are no additional hands raised. I did see that Andy had a follow-up question.
Hold on,
Well,
one thing,
yes,
Kaiser.
yeah.
See, the big book, the people, members of AA did not come up with Paul can't get out of self. They came up with self can't get out of self.
Mhm.
How did that look to Paul? It looked like Paul trying to get out of self.
Right.
But they had the clear x ray, it was self trying to get out of self. Paul was another extension of selfing. Yeah? That's
Mhm.
trying to get out of a known self. The unknown selfing called Paul is trying to get out of the known selfing called self. That's why they say self can't get out of self. It isn't Paul can't get out of self. It's self can't get out of self. What needs to be questioned about Paul is Paul in self? First and foremost. Yeah. He may not be in self, so there'd be no need to get out of self. And that's like the end around the dilemma of self can't get out of self. Yeah.
That's perhaps,
Paul,
yeah.
Paul, aka Spirit, stops trying to get out of self. Paul, aka Self, constantly is trying to get out of self. Yeah.
Yeah. like the freedom from freedom. You don't need freedom because you're free from it or something. Yeah, I get you. You have one more question. Do you have time for it? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've been I'm on a Zoom binge today.
Nice. Okay, the next question.
Might as well go all the way. Yeah.
Nice. We'll follow you all the way to the end. We have Mike O. Mike O, I asked you to unmute yourself. Go ahead and take it away.
Hiya, Paul. Thanks for the meeting. Just a quick one. I have a sponsee that have the privilege to take through the steps. Yeah, I feel that sponsee is giving me just paying lip service. Is my role just to give them the information and then move on to the next step? Or is it by me saying, I don't think you're ready, but for the next step is controlling? Can you just expand on that, please?
I don't think it's controlling because you may have a better view of their condition than they do. That's your role. It isn't like it's not like an obstacle course. We want to run through the 12 steps. There needs to be an understanding. Yeah, that doing the first step produces an understanding that is reinforced by the second step that leads to the third step, so they build on each other. If there's nothing there to build on, you can't put the house up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and the point is, the role of sponsoring is suggesting, and if the person isn't taking any of suggestions, then maybe they'll take it from someone else. So you give them the option. Hey, listen, if you don't even try the suggestions I'm giving you, then I'm not actually fulfilling. There's no sponsoring going on, so maybe you should find someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is a certain responsibility in the role of a sponsor. Maybe you can see them better than they can see themselves. And, you know, there are, obviously some people get in touch with me, and I know my feeling is by observing a lot of people that they need like a staff sergeant and like a boot camp mentality. I don't have that in me. So I tell them, maybe you need to find someone who goes to the same meetings you go to and stuff. Yeah, because I don't. You know what I mean? You have to see if you fulfill the requirement that they need at the time. Yeah, I don't want to have people call me every day. I want people to want to be sober. I don't want to have to be watching over them like a jailer or something. Yeah, so I don't think I do a good job as a staff sergeant. So I know others that are into staff sergeanting. So yeah, you know what I mean? The whole
Yeah.
point is the person at least attempts to do the suggestions. Yeah, and then be honest about what happens. But that's people. We tend to fall into that thing of contempt prior to investigation. So how are you going to know if a suggestion works or not until you try it? Yeah. So, yeah. So I feel it's not like I don't have any rote answer for people. It's an individual situation. Yeah. So, but I don't want to push people through with no understanding, especially of the first step. I mean, that has to be, yeah, because it's not like a chore we're getting done. It's a design for living. Yeah. So, yeah, yeah.
Thanks,
All
Paul.
right. All right.
Thanks a lot, Maiko. Um, how are you doing on time? We have one follow-up question from Andy, should you choose.
Yeah. One more is fine.
All right, Andy, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and just to
That's
let
the
you
end of Andy for the year, though. He's gotten
okay.
enough questions.
Just to let you know, Paul, and those watching, sometimes there's a little bit of a feedback when you speak in Andy's mic. So I'm going to
Yeah.
toggle back and forth about muting, unmuting. So if you ask him a response, give me just a second. All right, I'm going to unmute you, Andy, and go ahead.
Sorry about this, Paul. I never really ever ask you a question. Love has come up a couple of times in the conversation. What do you think about two addicts being in a relationship in the fellowship? Do you think it is a good idea or not? As in, I just know, what is your opinion on this?
Well, generally, I don't think it's a good idea, uh, but there's always exceptions. But usually, everyone thinks they're the exception. But generally, I don't think it's a good idea. No. People in recovery, when they're coming in, they're shopping for their own higher power. They love to crown someone else to be a higher power, a girlfriend or a boyfriend, so that they can be right when that higher power fails them. So they'll rely on the same old higher power, which is that which is playing God. Yeah. So, yeah, of course, a lot of things aren't the best thing to be involved with, but most people do it anyway. But yeah, I've seen some work. But they work anyway because the relationship may fail, but it may work on being more convinced about the need to be sober. So yeah. I think that covered it, eh?
Yeah, we're getting a thumbs up, so I think we're
Yeah,
good.
good, yeah. So, you come after a while of observing, you come up with some generalities, but you never let the generalities frame the situation. You see how they apply to the situation. Yeah, to me. I don't think every situation fits the generality, but a lot of the times the generality will fit the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of good feedback. He's understanding.
All right. Good. Good. I can stay for a little while. So go ahead. If any more questions.
All right, we've got a little bit of time. Actually, if anybody wants to ask that question, please raise your hand so I can get to you. Um, yeah, and then use this time to explore the 12 steps. If you guys are having any trouble regarding doing inventory, an understanding of a higher power, any of that kind of stuff, we've got one from Drew. We've got one that just came up. Drew, I'm going to ask you to first start your video, and then I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Give me a second. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, Paul, I was just gonna say on the letting go of old ideas, for my experience is just bringing in new ideas that the like higher power and the old ideas kind of take care of themselves. And
Yeah.
I can give you a little bit of credit, for helping me out. But but yeah, I have found from kind of disconnecting to bringing in new ideas through recovery, that the old ideas, kind of fester back up. So thanks for keep coming back, and thanks for everybody
Yeah.
past.
One thing I'd add to that. I like that, but I'd add like the recognition of the oldest idea is the story of the one who has the old ideas. Yeah. Sometimes letting go of that old idea or recognizing it as just that really uh, affects the chain of the other old ideas. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. All right. Well, then we'll end with that.
It's great. Go say your goodbyes.
I
Thanks a lot,
will.
everybody.
I got 3 more Zooms to do today.
Oh, dude.
I have a bath break. No. That's it. Hey, Mike. It's nice to see you, Mike Z. Always. We got Tim N. Always a pleasure. But know what's good with doing a lot of stuff? Sometimes like the flavor comes out with the inventory in a form of seeing. I hadn't I had eaten that before, but I found some new taste in that. That was pretty cool. You know, you go on a riff and sometimes the riff takes you farther. It adds like a few more notes. I like that. Ahead, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you're understanding, but the ones who know me know. Yeah. So Paul, nice to see you, Paul. Got a stylish shirt. Now we're going with the button-down shirts. I'm gonna have to up my game. All right, it's on. We got Mike O. Nice to see you, Mike. It's much better than Mike O. Yeah, works much better. We got Chris. Nice to see you, Chris. There. Crispy, Rob Fa from the UK. He's been with us ever from the inception of the Zoom. Appreciate it. And so has other Paul. We got Gary. He's been here. Kerry. He's now located in Hawaii. Very nice. Yeah. We got Kristen. Always a pleasure. Kristen's got a large skylight mind, which I like. Joseph C. I'll be seeing you, Joseph, on Saturday. Yes. Oh, there's Zoe. Zoe's made a guest appearance. She became a star in another show, so she just dropped in for a cameo. Nice to see you, Z. Always a pleasure. We got FI. Nice to see you, FI. I think it's that. Whatever. FI. Fee.
It's Fee, Paul.
I met your brothers, Fi Fo Dum Fum. They were nasty. Fee Fi Fo, yeah. Fee is nice. Thank you. We got Merrill, as always. A pleasure, Merrill. If I was a woman, Merrill, I would like to have you as my sponsor. Jennifer.
Thank you.
Jennifer from Arizona. Nice to see you, Jennifer. Walter from Amsterdam. I hope your rivers don't have the same color combo in your Zooms. You got a strange color.
What?
It's like a little, you're like in a sort of like a purgatory. You're not in the hottest area of hell, but you're a little cooking in there. Oh, there you
Like
go.
this?
Yeah, I like that. Yes. Your heart can't be put out. And as always, yes, connected. Yes. James Lebowski. Lebowski is just spending the whole day looking at his image in a mirror. Very good. Ad infinitum. We got Sharon P. Nice to see you, Sharon. We got Tom, and he's got the cat there. Tom H. Nice to see you, Tom. Thank you for your attendance. Appreciate it. We got Ben H. over there. We got Owen from Ireland. Nice to see you, Owen. Yes. Mickey, I'll be seeing you this weekend also. There's no Saturday meeting for the regular group. We're going to do a virtual retreat for someone else. Yeah.
Got it.
Carl N. Nice to see you, Carl. Thank you for your support. Kaiser, as always. Helen. Andy. Nice to see you, Andy. Leah, your little donation went to a scholarship. Thank you for that. Jack G. He's in another vehicle. They're never moving, thank God, and he's looking out at some I don't know what. He doesn't look like he's in Massachusetts, that's for sure. All right, we got Michael S. Michael Stacy, my main man in the interior of California. We got let's see, Drew, Leah, everyone else. Let me see here. We got Ben R. He looks like he's seen a big tree in that picture. We got Rich A. He's got his electrical diagram of his system. Nice. We got Julianne, iPhone, Nina, not Mina or Tina, but Nina, I think, or another Nina.
No, it's
Thanks so much. I'll see everyone tomorrow night if you like. I think it's, what's today?
Today's Tuesday.
Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. No, it's at 7:30, 7 o'clock Pacific time, and then Thursday again we'll have recovery, and then Saturday will not happen this Saturday. We're on a nothing conference. You can look at the information on the website. Thank you. Thanks everybody.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
Stop recording, Mike. Oh, stop recording, Mike. And I'm stopping the live stream.